week, and the Toronto Blue Jays have arrived, and the Orioles bats have not arrived. Here to talk all things Orioles after the first loss in a three-game series here of, I don't want to call it must-win here, Luke Jones, but, when it starts to go the other way and the games start to add up and the days grow longer into September and the chase grows harder, these are the games that are going to make a difference as to where they stand 2 weeks from now.
Well, we've talked about this. We talk about this all season long. It's all about trying to make things as easy as possible on yourselves once you get to the middle of September and beyond. I mean, you don't want to be in a position where you're 6 games out with 14 games to play because you know how that's going to go. You're going to get your feelings hurt. You're going to be desperate for help from other teams, and then ultimately, most of the time, that help's not going to come. And we talk so much about this series going into it about what the pitching matchups look like. I mean, Wade Miley against Marco Estrada, Ubaldo Jimenez against Jay Happ, Gallardo against Sanchez in the finale. And lo and behold, Wade Miley gives you a very, very solid 7 innings, gives up 3 runs. I think the Orioles would have done cartwheels if they knew that Wade Miley gives them that kind of an outing against this lineup. I think fans that are being reasonable couldn't have asked for much more than that from Miley. But then the Orioles only managed 4 hits against Marco Estrada, just the solo home run from J.J. Hardy, and it's a loss. As you said, I don't think we're in must-win territory right now, but you're in really, really like-to-win territory right now because, the more games like this that you lose, the sooner you get to must-win territory at the
these
end.
Two-game swings really take a dip if they were to drop the game tonight, and then you're really battling back from underneath, and it gets more difficult. The Red Sox will be playing into the middle of the night all week here, and we'll see how that turns out for them and against some inferior competition. But the West Coast is the West Coast, and everyone stumbles there. But if those two teams start putting that kind of separation, then you really are playing for the last wild card spot.
Yeah, and it's starting to feel that way, and it's not over. I talked about this after the Yankees series. We talked about this after the Houston series last week, right around this time when everyone was, saying the season's over. From a mathematical standpoint, they're still in pretty good shape. They're still the second wild card holder, even with what they're dealing with now, but they're a season-high 4 games out. And as you said, if things get away from them the next 2 nights, you're looking at being 6 games out, and then you're really starting to enter that must-win territory pretty darn soon. And you got some teams behind you that are playing pretty well. Kansas City, Houston, Detroit. Those teams have dropped a couple games here recently, but overall, those teams have played pretty well over the last 2-3 weeks or so. So it's not as though you can go into this stretch where you're just going to go through the motions and keep dropping series. It's concerning. And we've talked about this for the better part of 5-6 weeks now. Through the first 3 months of the season, we talked about how all the peaks lasted a long time. They had all the different winning streaks, and they really were able to minimize those valleys, really able to minimize those tough times. It's flipped. You're seeing more so now where you're losing 4 out of 5. You're losing 4 games in a row. And then you're bouncing back, but you're not bouncing back for long. And certainly after what happened the first 2 games of the New York series, they get the win. They get the really good start from Gausman. And then you come home, you're saying, okay, it's Toronto. Yeah, the Blue Jays are red hot, but you played so well at Camden Yards all year long. And you get a good outing from Wade Miley, and you can't get anything going. And look, I know Marco Estrada is a good pitcher. Good changeup, really kept the Orioles off balance. I thought he did a nice job. But at the same time, this lineup's too good to be going an entire game with 4 hits and 1 run. You're not going to beat anyone doing that. Unless you got an ace pitching a shutout on your end, and we know the Orioles don't have that. So we've said this over and over all year long, really, but it especially holds true now with Tillman out, with O'Day out in the bullpen, and we know they've had their issues in middle and long relief. This team must score runs to win. It sounds like a Captain Obvious statement. It is a Captain Obvious statement, but you have to score, and that's what this team is built to do, is to score runs. And they get a good outing, a better outing than you could have reasonably asked for from Wade Miley to go 7 innings and only give up 3 runs, and he got nothing to show for it. So now you're faced with looking at Ubaldo going up against this lineup, and then Gallardo. I mean, it's just they were fortunate to get the outing they did from Miley. Not sure if you can keep asking that from these guys if we're being realistic.
Well, I would ask you this, Luke. I mean, you're in the locker room. I'm not. After the game on Monday, I mean, it's got to be a different vibe. I remember those days back when I was a real media member and going in there when things are really going the wrong way, and it gets to be combustible because, and maybe for the first time that, in your time around the team where they're really supposed to win, they've played from in front most of the year, they haven't had sort of this kind of backup. In the 2 bad years here in the last 4, they've always kind of been scuffling along, and it's been disappointing, but it hasn't been sort of a fall from grace. Maybe the Palmero year was that way, over a decade ago now, but the 2 years coming from behind and then playing from ahead and pulling ahead, it's a whole different vibe when you're the Royals or the Orioles of 14 and you're the team, that starts out 3 games up and it's 5 and it's 7 and you can't believe it. Before you know it, it's 12. And before you know it, you look up and it's Labor Day and you're locking things down. This is a different sort of spin for Buck, for Adam Jones, for all the guys in that locker room to see this thing start to crumble a little bit and say, all right, who's going to step up? Who's going to hit the ball? Who's going to get a big hit? I know who it wasn't on Monday night. It wasn't Nolan Reimold. It wasn't Matt Wieters. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if I'd say they've never been in this territory. I mean, it's not as though they had a 9-game lead in the division that they've kind of been holding on for a while now. Even when they were still in first place, it was okay. They're up by 1, they're up by 2. Maybe they push it to 2.5. I mean, they haven't had a sizable lead in the division. It had been a while since they'd even had that, and then of course they lost their grasp over the last month, and since then they've kind of just been hanging in there. I'm not seeing a drastic change in the clubhouse just yet. I think there's clearly some urgency. I know J.J. Hardy. I asked him, does this, when you lose the opener, knowing that you're chasing this team directly, does it put a little more urgency into the next 2 games? And he said, I mean, sure, you're chasing them, but at the same time, you can't realize the magnitude to the point where that it's eating you up. You can't put so much pressure on yourself that you're on edge and tight. I mean, it's rare that you can thrive in this game when you have that kind of a mentality. I mean, you really do have to be able to compartmentalize. You can't worry about what's happened the last week or 2 weeks. You can't worry about what happened in the first 3 months of the season. You can't worry about what happens next week. I mean, baseball more than any other sport does really feel like that mentality where you have to take each day individually because you're playing. You don't have 6 days to think about it like you do in the National Football League or even in the NBA or the NHL where you'll have a few days off in between games at times. You really do have to get right back on the horse. And one of the credits, and I've talked about this with you so many times over the last 4 or 5 years where they've had their times where they've been at their most successful, it's that they don't get too high and they don't get too low. But it's clear, I mean, they're feeling it. And if for no other reason, Toronto and Boston continue to play so well. You're not getting those teams have stubbed their toes from time to time, but you haven't seen either of those teams go into a dramatic slide in a while. At least it feels that way anyway.
Well, it feels like last week was a long time ago. I mean, this team took 3 out of 4 from the Nationals, right? So, I mean, you couldn't feel any better on Friday than that. I mean, it is funny how a couple of games and you start to see the thing teeter a little bit.
Yeah, but even then, think about it. I mean, they were teetering before they did that. It just goes back to my point. They're feeling that peril a lot more now, and they're not pulling themselves out as dramatically as they were. They're still doing it. They've been hanging on. I think, probably the best way to put it is they've kind of kept their head above water. They haven't fallen to the point where they're 7 games out of the division and 3.5 out of the wild card, where you start to say, okay, the division's not looking good, and you got 4 teams ahead of you in the wild card race, which is basically at this time last year, that's what happened to them. Remember, they had that stretch of 12 losses in 13 games, and it really ended any chance they had of even the wild card because they just had so many teams ahead of them. So they're not at that point yet, but it's certainly, you're just getting that feeling more and more that they haven't been pitching well primarily, but even when they're getting good pitching, it seems like the bats aren't showing up the way they need to consistently. And I'll still go back to that first month or so after the All-Star break, remember, they got pretty good pitching. Their starting rotation was doing a decent job. That's when Bundy was pitching at his best, and they still had Tillman going. Gosman was pitching well. Gallardo was starting to show some signs of coming around. For the first time all year, they had a rotation that didn't look like a disaster. And what happened over that stretch? Their bats disappeared. So they really didn't maximize that. Now you've seen the starting pitching, Monday night notwithstanding, Gosman notwithstanding on Sunday, but the pitching is kind of reverted to what we saw in the first half a lot more. But you still haven't seen the bats explode in the way they did in, say, June. So, they're just, right now, they're not firing on all cylinders or even close to all cylinders. And, even on Monday night, they squared up some balls against Estrada, hit right at defenders. So even the few balls that they hit well, they hit right at people. It's just, I've talked about it a lot. You'll go through times where you're bad. You'll go through some times when you're unlucky. It seems like of late, the Orioles have been bad and unlucky in some of these games, and I feel it's really adding up, and it can be a drain on you mentally. That's for sure.
Adam Jones, give me a little update there. This is a different ball club without him in there. I mean, I've always had respect for him. I always like the way he plays. I don't always like what he says, or some of the off the field stuff rubs me sort of wrong sometimes. But I need him on my team. He is the centerpiece. He is a guy making $16 million a year. When he's not in there, for this couple 3, 4, 5 games, whatever, back in April, you miss him. You really do.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a gamer. As much as we've talked about, Manny Machado, for example, and I'm going to pick on him a little bit here. We've talked about times where he hasn't run out balls this year. I mean, it's been painfully obvious. Buck Showalter has addressed it. I don't think the answer is benching him or anything like that, but it's clear that he's a guy that at times you question his hustle, you question his effort. As great as he is, and he's absolutely the best player on this team, but Adam Jones, you don't question that. That guy, for as much as maybe he didn't do it early in his career, from the point that Buck Showalter got here, Adam Jones has been a gamer, a guy that posts up, he runs out every ball. He's going to frustrate you because he's going to do some things as far as his plate discipline and swinging a pitch.
Yeah, he's going to swing at bad pitches, man. There are going to be nights you're going to be pulling your hair out with him. But being said, I'd rather have him at the plate than Nolan Reimold or whatever the plan B is for this organization, especially during the trying times, which is now.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Jones, Machado's the best player on this club, but Adam Jones remains the heart and soul of this club. And, he's banged up with the hamstring right now. They're trying to be smart with it. Said he was feeling better on Monday, but, the reality is they still do have a month to go. Even if these next couple days don't go well with Toronto, the season is not over. I mean, they're still the wild card. They're still, going on a run like they were able to do at a few different points in the first half. You get some guys back healthy. And you can still make a run. Not saying I'd bet on it or I'd say that's the most likely scenario if that happens, but the season's not over. So you've got to have at least some view of the long term here. And when I say long term, I mean the final 5 weeks here of the season where, if Jones is teetering as far as whether he can go or not, I think you still have to err on the side of caution for at least a couple more days to try to get that thing completely right. Now, does that mean he can't pinch hit or something along those lines where there's a very unique situation? I wouldn't rule that out, but it's clear they want to try to get this thing right. And because of what we just said, because he is a gamer, because he is a guy who runs out every ball and is going to dive in the outfield, you can't ask him to play a different way. Adam Jones at 80% effort doesn't work. Problem is, you don't want Adam Jones 80% health-wise, because, you can make that much worse with his style of play. So, it's a tough spot for them right now. Nolan Reimold made a really nice catch in the first inning, a heck of a catch, one I didn't think he'd be capable of making in center field, but it's clear whoever they put out there, whether it's him, whether it's Julio Bourbon, whether, hypothetically, if Joey Rickard were healthy right now, as he's still working his way back from the thumb injury, none of those guys hold a candle to Adam Jones being out there, being in the lineup. And, right now it's the latest trial that they're trying to, as I said, they're trying to keep their head above water right now. And, you feel like, kind of their chin sinking underneath the water. And it goes up to their mouth. And, you're hoping they can avoid having their entire head go under because, it's been they played so well for so many stretches of this season. You don't want it to go south here quickly, but you got to turn things around and try to salvage get the last 2 games of this series somehow, even if it doesn't look favorable on paper. It didn't look favorable with Miley starting. Do that, you're feeling a lot better about yourselves. But if things go south or continue to go south next couple nights, then that panic button, maybe it's not pressed, but you're certainly getting it out at that point.
He is Luke Jones. You can follow him out on Twitter at Baltimore Luke. We are at WNST. And I got to tell you, Luke, the tweet of the night came when you announced the attendance. And there was a young lady in Toronto who on our Twitter replied to it that there were more people than that lined up at Gate 5 the night they gave Kevin Pillar bobbleheads away. And, it's not a reach to say that I have friends at the game as well on their Facebook threads throwing up stuff. I know Joe Enoch, my pal, was on Facebook at the game saying, where are all the people? It is kind of dead, and it is kind of when the Blue Jays hit a home run and Donaldson goes yard, there, whatever group of people in the blue that drive up from D.C. or expat Canadians or here on fun or visits or baseball or whatever it is, there's some energy around the Blue Jays fans now. I've talked to people in Toronto about it. They're starting to travel a little bit and get interested in the team all of a sudden as well. I think it's got to be disheartening for Machado and some guys, and for Adam Jones, and for Buck, and for the organization to try to build something to get to this point and have it really be sort of morbidly empty on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this. I mean, it's nothing new. I'll point out, Orioles fans did go down to D.C. A lot of people talked about how much orange was in Nats Park last week. TV ratings have been high. They've had very good TV ratings all year. So I don't think it's an overall lack of interest by any stretch of the imagination. I think this comes back to, and you know this very well, most ticket sales are driven by season tickets. And when you put your season tickets on sale, you send your invoices out in February, on top of raising prices, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, I had people telling me, it was the first day of school and, talking about the unrest flash. And look, all those other factors are also variables. It's never just one thing. But I think we continue to go back to, what we said, the timing of when season tickets and tickets were put on sale in the off season. They raised ticket prices. And, as I pointed out, some of the deals, we talked about bargain night and different things like that they had over the years. Some of those things went away as well. So, on the weekends, their attendance has been okay. They've had giveaways. I think you'll have people that are certainly willing, even at higher prices, are willing to do that for the weekends. But what are you doing to get people to come to the ballpark on weeknights and look?
Well, you know what they would say? We're winning. That's what they would say,
I hear you.
And we're
I
here.
Hear you. And
that's arrogant, and that's who they are, and it's who they've been for a quarter of a century. But that really is the answer. We're winning. Have you not heard? Come to the park.
That is part of it because, as I pointed out, go back to the 60s and early 70s. The Orioles didn't draw then, and they had the best, arguably the best team in baseball year in and year out. So you can talk about the fan base all you want, whatever. I mean, there's. No,
I'm not even passing. Luke, I mean, I sit here. You and I go night after night. I'm just saying on a night like Monday night, it's a factor. You put the game on television, you see nobody's there, and the team's in the pennant race, and it's the biggest game of the year. It really is the biggest game of the year by kind of any stretch, I would say. I mean,
sure.
If you sweep these 3 games, you're back in first place, and then you'd like to think that people will come pouring into the ballpark this weekend. But, that's my 1979, 1983 Dundalk, take the 23 to the 22, get the G&A Coney Island. That's not 2016. 2016 is I'm in Bel Air and they're not giving me a T-shirt and I stick my finger in the air and the traffic and the water and the riots and the money and the game's on TV at home. Sure, but then you do put it on and those players go and play and. I'm guessing Machado has a little bit of an ego, and I'm pretty sure Adam Jones does, that it does hurt some feelings. It does ruffle that they are out after the game saying, where the hell are the people? And, my answer to them would be I wrote about the owner and what's gone on here the last 25 years, and I do think that's a factor. I think it's sad. I mean, I would like to see more people there, much as anyone else would. I live down here.
Well, and I'll say this. Look, I mean, is there still remnants of 14 straight years? Absolutely, of course. But at the same time, their attendance is down from where it was the last 4 years. And, it should be the opposite of that, right? I mean, they've been winning for 5 years.
Sure.
So I think you have to go back to what is this organization? And look, Adam Jones and Manny Machado and Buck Showalter as a baseball team, they do deserve more fan support.
They've done all that they can, and then some.
But the key is, what are you doing as an organization to get people to come out to the ballpark? And we talked about this back in 2012. Remember, they did turn back the clock pricing for their left field, the outfield box seat. They did some different things like that in September to try to boost ticket.
Well, they're doing Bobble Boy and Bobble Girl in a couple weeks, and wicker hats, and I don't know.
Well, I mean, they all these giveaways that they do, they primarily, just about all of them are on weekends. So what are you doing to get more people to come out on weeknights? Because you have
their answer would be people should care enough about the team that when the team's playing for first place, but people don't care about the team in that way, right? Like they're happy watching it at home or at the bar. They really are.
Well, but that's why you need to come up with ways to get people to come to the bar. And it's not always even just a giveaway. Bargain Night Tuesdays, which they had for years, and that went away this year. Dollar hot dog night. There's different things to do that family. Whether it's a guy and his girlfriend or a family of four are saying, you know what, that's a pretty cool thing on a Tuesday night. Instead of only going out on Friday night or Saturday night like we have been all year, let's go out that Tuesday of the second week in September. And I'm just throwing that out there as an example. You have to come up with ways to get your customers to come out on the
Marty Conway and I talked about this at length. You can go find it at the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault last week. I mean, Marty did this for a living. Marty sort of invented part of Oriole Magic back in the 80s. When I bring Marty on, there's no better guest. And, one of the things he talked about was group ticket sales. Church groups, local groups, bar groups, kids groups, Little League groups. We don't see a ton of that, really. And I don't want to say they encourage or don't encourage. I mean, I don't know how many people want to get on a bus and go down there anymore. That used to be sort of an old school way of doing it. I don't know the last time I got offered, University of Baltimore sends me something, but Angelo supports them. Why the hell would I support them? Other than that, I don't even see stuff on my Facebook. A couple of bars in the area run a beer bus once and again, but, I don't see a lot of Little League fan groups, safety day, all of that kind of stuff. It really is about promotions, and really, Luke, I mean, I'm going to go old school here, and I might side with Mr. Angelos on this. The team winning should be a factor in people coming out. There should be value in coming out to see the Toronto Blue Jays play the Baltimore Orioles for first place in late August on a decent enough weather night, and Lord knows there haven't been enough of those this year, and that would be a factor as well. I don't know where it lies. I'm just viewing it from literally top down and saying it's sad, and you watch it, and I can only imagine with Jonathan Scope and, especially guys like Machado, and even though Davis is making a fortune and all that, it feels like they're playing in an episode of Major League on a night like Monday night instead of in the middle of a pennant race, and that truly is sad. That's all.
Right.
Just sad.
Right, exactly. And I saw so many different people, all different groups of people kind of going back and forth on this about Twitter, blaming different groups, blaming different factors. It is, regardless of the reasons. And again, the winning should be part of it too. It is. And we talked about this the last couple of years at Ravens games. We've seen a few more empty seats. And look, we know all the seats are sold, but, people showing up at the games. We've talked about this. This isn't anything new or completely unique to the Orioles, although certainly they can do better things to market themselves.
Hey, they're talking about this in Cleveland too, by the way, right? Yeah. I mean, they are.
So is there a certain amount of wanting more passion from your fan base? Yeah, that's part of the pie, but there are so many different slices here, and I'll continue to go back to you put your season ticket invoices out in February and you raise prices. I mean, that right there is going to be very, very difficult to overcome if you're not going above and beyond finding more ways to market, finding more ways to try to attract people on the weeknights. Weekends, they've done a lot in terms of giveaways and trying to get people out. But on weeknights, it's more challenging because you do have school and you do have people that don't want to go downtown in the middle of the week. And you do have, all those factors all
Hey, man, if you were hanging out in Ocean City eating cotton candy and spending money on French fries and running up and down the boardwalk and took half Sunday to get back, going downtown for a ball game on Monday night when the game's on in your living room is just, I get it. I mean, believe me, I live 2 blocks away and I never go, Luke. I mean, I hear you.
Yeah. So it just comes down to, as an organization, as a business, think of it as patrons for a restaurant even. What are you doing to get people to come out on those less desirable nights?
Lobster night, baby. Prime rib night, right? Prime rib, $9.99.
So, like I said, whether it's dollar hot dogs or a coupon, there's all kinds. Buy one get one free, or buy 2 tickets get one free.
WNST night, Section 388, those sort of things.
It just comes down to, and this is going to be the very interesting question for the final month of the season. How badly does the organization want to put people in seats? And look, I'm not saying that there's going to be, short of giving away tickets completely free, and I'm not, it's a business and they got to, I understand that, but, you got to ask yourself, how important is it going to be to have a full crowd for Adam Jones and for Manny Machado and for Jonathan Scope and for Chris Tillman and Dylan Bundy? How badly will what lengths will the organization go to help remedy that some? 2012, they did turn back the clock pricing. They offered 1992 prices for their left field box, outfield box seats, and I believe some other. I think they're upper reserve and things of that nature. Do they do something with saying, okay, 1996 is the first time they made the playoffs at Camden Yards? Maybe they offer 1996 pricing for certain.
Well, every night's unused seats on an airplane at this point. It's unslept-in nights in hotel rooms, and there certainly were plenty of those to go around on Monday night. And I'm guessing Mr. Angelos' minions are all sitting around trying to figure it out over there. But I'm just viewing it from 50,000 feet and pointing at what I see, and and I know the players see it, and
It's unfortunate. It's sad. This is a really exciting time of year, and again, regardless of what happens over these final 5 weeks, this has been a good baseball team this year, and much better than, quite frankly, guys like you and me thought they would be through this point in the season. I thought they'd hover around 500.
Are you calling me an expert, Luke Jones?
Well,
how dare you call me an expert?
I said guys like you and me, not an expert. As I do this longer, I realize how little of an expert I really am, because that's why they play the game.
Hey, it's 25 years of me doing it and a lot of people not doing it. So if I'm not an expert, I don't know who the hell is. But again, I love that tag, experts, because how little we know about any of this stuff. If we knew about it, we'd all go to Vegas and retire, right?
Exactly. That's what makes it fun, and that's why this is a really fun place to watch a ball game when it's filled. We've seen that. We saw that back in the mid to late 90s. We've seen it at times over the last 4 or 5 years when it's been full. I mean, this can be a really great atmosphere. Frankly, I think it's one of the few places that can be an intimidating atmosphere when it's filled, but clearly that 15,000, regardless of the reasons. And we've discussed them ad nauseum. We'll continue to discuss.
And by the way, there weren't 15,000 there. That was the announced crowd, which makes it even worse.
Well, we know that's the case with any attendance that's announced anywhere, pretty much. But it's unfortunate, regardless of the reasons. Again, I don't think it's that the fans don't care. I think you have to offer some more incentives to get the fans who do care, that are watching at home and have been watching a lot this year, because the ratings have suggested that. You have to find ways to get them more tempted to come out on a Tuesday or a Thursday night and provide a little more in-stadium support for a team that clearly could use it right now with the way things are trending.
My dollar's going to crush it against the euro here for the next 4.5 days. But I was thinking the same thing with attendance. If 15,000 is really like 9.5, that's the kind of exchange rate I'm looking for on my dollar to euros. So, hey, man, I'll see you on the other side. We will definitely catch up. I'll be in Germany later on this week. Many of you know my wife and I are going over to Germany to seek out the man who saved her life twice. So it's going to be a good week. We might even wind up at a German national soccer game, Lucas. So crazy things are going to happen here. Kolsch, we got the Spetzel, we got all sorts of schnitzel, strudel, all the doles. We got Frankfurters in Frankfurt. It's going to be a big week, man.
That sounds good. Safe travels to you, and looking forward to hearing all about it.
And if I come back and the Orioles are in 4th place, I'm holding you personally responsible.
Or if they're in 1st place, you might just have to stay there,
I know some people that would appreciate that as well. Hey, man, we'll be back this weekend, and, of course, Luke will be on the scene at Oriole Park all week long on our Twitter, on our social, here on WNST.net, still making radio, doing all the stuff that we do, including Thursday night and the Saints and the Ravens in the meaningless preseason game. But I'm going to talk to some friends from New Orleans all week long here at WNST and have some fun. Hope you're enjoying the programming. Anything you miss, you can find in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. You can download the TuneIn Radio app and listen live from anywhere in the world. Also, our morning newspaper graces your email inbox with your permission at 7 a.m. every morning. It is brought to you by Planet Fitness at planetfitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Last but never least, breaking news, and the Ravens will be contracting. The Orioles will be adding to the roster with the 40-man here this week. All of it comes to you first on the WNST Text Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will have you covered from 3 until 5 on Thursday, getting you ready for fake football from the Big Easy on Thursday night. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.